Hello? Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey sinners, it's your fucking prophet speaking. God says that we actually came from her vagina, not Adam's rib. God wants us to address her as that bitch now in all prayers and legal documents. Did you know that John has a twink on the side? Olivia doesn't even know. Oh my god, I heard that they're swingers. She practically propositioned me in the church parking lot. Having gained an angel, more like hell gained a bitch.
Hello to all my girls, gays, and theys, and welcome back to Pouting Mouth Babes. I'm your prophet, host, Tara, and I'm so happy that you're here today. Today's episode is going to be an interesting one. I want to say that it's going to be fun, but it also could be a little bit traumatizing. I'm just going to talk to you like you're my closest friends. So no judgment here. Know that we'll go in and out of a little bit of sarcasm, but there are going to be some serious stories shared. We're getting into everything about premarital exams, wedding night horror stories, and just all of the myths that we were taught about purity culture. I've wanted to do an episode on this just because premarital exams specifically are such a specific to Utah Mormon culture thing. I will say that I watched a show about Hasidic Judaism where they also did something very, very similar. So I think it's just a common thing that happens in extremely conservative religious groups. And I cannot wait to dive into all of your submissions. It's kind of a two-part submissions because we have the first part where people are going to be sharing their stories about their premarital exams. And then we have the second part where people are going to be sharing their stories about their wedding night horror stories or just funny stories about their wedding nights. So first we have to discuss what a premarital exam is. I have an article that I'm going to link in the show notes because it goes over such a good example of what a premarital exam typically entails, how it kind of got started. But I'll also just give you a rundown here real quick. It's typically a medical exam done by a gynecologist for women before marriage. And often it's suggested by a parent or a leader in Mormonism, or even the person who is getting married may go and do this just because it's something of like common knowledge, especially in like Utah, Idaho, Arizona area, to hear about something that you need to do before you get married. While it's not a actual formal medical requirement at all, it's been done in high populated LDS communities and just religious conservative communities in general. So basically what it is like your first intake session going to a gynecologist. But in Utah, its purpose and within the Mormon community is really to assess like your physical readiness for vaginal intercourse. A lot of women will get on birth control so that they don't get pregnant, because now you're allowed to take birth control because marriage is happening, so it's an okay thing to do. Typically, up until this point, most Mormon women will not take birth control, and it's seen as like a negative thing to do before you're married because it insinuates that, oh, you can just go and have sex with whoever you want now. And so even if you need birth control for different reasons like polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, or whatever medical reason you might need birth control, it's not typically something that as a teenager, as a woman, as a teenage girl that you would be, it's not something that your mom would get you as a teenage girl. And in fact, it would be looked at as very negative for you to be on birth control because, like I said, now you can go and be all floozy and have sex with whoever you want. It's also to make sure that there's no problems that you might run into at the wedding night. Again, having to do with vaginal intercourse and penetration. This is typically where there's a lot of virgins will go. And I say virgins in parentheses because a lot of us growing up in Utah, yes, there is a lot of girls and boys who never ever participate in masturbation, never participate in like derfing, which is dry humping, never participating in like we would say the poop hole is the loophole, or docking, or all of these like soaking things that are talked about in Mormon culture to get around actually having full on sex, because we consider full on sex as just vaginal intercourse. I know it doesn't make sense, but we're so not equipped with sexual education that we really just don't even know where to get started. And so typically this is your first like full-blown introduction into like actual comprehensive sex education. Sex education in Utah is so horrible because it's abstinence only, and so it's literally barely even talked about. A lot of us can get to adulthood and not even really know the mechanics of how it all works because we've never been taught. And we talked a little bit about that last episode. So what does it typically entail to get a premarital exam? We kind of went over the basics, but it really is like a general medical checkup to talk about your menstrual cycle, even sexual activity to get checked if you possibly may think you might have STDs, but you know, a lot of people could lie. And to go over any known health issues. They typically do a pelvic exam, which can be very uncomfortable and really misunderstood. Typically, it includes like a pap smear to make sure that there's like no cervical cancer, and they, you know, are checking for STDs just in case. Some have said that they may even check the hymen. And again, this is a myth because there is no medical relevance to the hymen, meaning somebody is a virgin. Providers are also helping women to get on birth control and get a general knowledge of how to use birth control correctly. A lot of times women will want to start birth control, you know, long before they're actually married. And by long, I mean just like, you know, 2 to 3 months before, because we get married in Mormonism so quickly. But the reason why they are wanting to start it is because, you know, birth control has a lot of different side effects that can happen, and you find out really quickly if it's even something that you can deal with. So a lot of people want to see if it's something that's going to work for them. And then providers may give tips on like lubrication, avoiding pain, managing sex anxiety for the first time. And like I said, it's for those huge educational gaps. Really, a lot of LDS girls will reach marriage with zero understanding of their anatomy or sexual function, and a lot of them have not even masturbated yet. And when it comes to your just like sexual health and pleasure, you are never even talking about this. Like we talked about last episode, sexuality for women is not really allowed within Mormonism. It's always assumed that men are these uncontrollable like sexual beings that are constantly masturbating, constantly looking at porn, and that women are so pure, put on this pedestal that they would just never do anything at all like that. And so really we are learning what any of this even means. A lot of your premarital exams are so common in Utah because of purity culture. That is absolutely why it's such a big thing, because sex is so sinful. It's the sin next to murder until suddenly it's not. And so figuring all of that out can be really, really hard. You know, good girls wait and then magically they're able to have sex and really enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, you're just supposed to please your husband. And so a premarital exam is to make sure that everything will work. And a lot of times women request it for themselves to kind of calm their own anxiety, to make sure that they can have a good wedding night experience. A lot of women are prescribed dilators. I just want to say that dilators are absolutely a valid part of healthcare. There are many women, especially within religious communities on a higher level, that are suffering from vaginismus, and is typically a good girl syndrome of not being able to mentally connect with your pelvic floor to be able to release it to allow for vaginal penetration. And so it absolutely is something that is part of good healthcare. However, using the dilators prior to your wedding night to be able to enjoy it, I have different feelings on it. I have feelings that like, yeah, that's really great, but like also we should have been able to masturbate and use dildos to be able to prepare for this if we wanted to, and just have sex with people if you wanted to be able to prepare for it, instead of it just turning into a completely like medical thing and not something that's about your own pleasure and own desires, and just something that's supposed to be about making babies and being able to repopulate the church's population and quote unquote and quote God's army unquote, makes it a really weird thing, especially with impurity culture. And there's a lot of common misconceptions and harmful messages that come with this when it comes to premarital exams. Like, the doctor cannot tell if you're a virgin. That is completely false. Whether your hymen's broken or not broken, that has nothing to do with virginity. And virginity is completely and utterly a social construct that should absolutely be done away with. The misconception that you should be tight, like your vaginal canal should be tight if you're pure, and this leads to a fear of like, if I don't bleed, that I'm loose or I'm not a virgin again. And then another common misconception is pain on your wedding night. You should not be in any pain. Many women are told that like pain is normal, discomfort is normal, you're just gonna have to get used to it, when really it's a sign to show that you should either stop, use lube, or communicate better. You should not be in pain for your first time having sex. That is such a huge misconception. I wish we could just shout it from the rooftops that it should never be painful to have sex. And I do think there are times when premarital exams are actually helpful, but I also don't think they should be labeled premarital exams. I think it should just be labeled a gynecologist intake session, because your first time going to a gynecologist, they do go over all of this information. It can be really useful when you have an appointment for your first time with a gynecologist and it's done in a really sex positive way, no judgment, and you get really good information about birth control, lubrication, your body anatomy. And if you have any concerns about medical issues like vaginismus or having real like irregular periods or pain, can be really, really important. I just think that in purity culture, it's often used to reinforce shame and validate you for being a virgin, and without full education and consent, which we will get into a lot of your guys' experiences when it comes to premarital exams and the issues of the lack of consent and an education, especially when you're getting married so young. I think the average now for a lot of Mormons is like 21 that they're getting married, so not so young. I feel like when I was growing up, people were getting married at like 19. It was pretty young. And then like even before that, like 18, super, super young to get married. But I was definitely married by 21. And so you should have a good understanding of your body. But the fact that there's so much that goes on so that we don't, because we're so ashamed and so afraid of our body and taught that like your body, the natural man, is an enemy to God, is so harmful. And I would never expect you all to share your most vulnerable stories with me and your funny stories with me without sharing myself. And so to really kick us off into our oral traditions segment of premarital exams, where we get into your submissions, I will share my own stories about my premarital exam. And I will say that I actually did not have a traditional premarital exam because I went to a gynecologist a lot younger than I think most Mormon girls go to a gynecologist. And mine was not done in Utah, so technically it wasn't even a premarital exam. It was just my first time going to a gynecologist. And the reason that I went was because on my mission, I started to have periods that would never end. So I was just bleeding, and the bleeding would get worse and worse. And I hope nobody is like And I hope that it's okay to just talk about this openly with you all, because I feel like for the longest time I was made to feel like this is like such a weird conversation to have. And I really don't think it is a weird conversation to have. And so on my mission, I had always grown up with having really irregular periods. Honestly, when I first got my period, I was so ashamed and so embarrassed and was like gagging anytime I had to deal with my period. So when it was irregular, and when it was always irregular, like every 3 months, every 6 months, sometimes every year, and that was starting at like 13 years old is when I got my first period. I didn't mind it, and I didn't tell anyone because I didn't feel comfortable talking to my parents about my period. I didn't feel comfortable telling them how painful it was. I also didn't feel comfortable even asking them to get me like period products. I legitimately would just like go into my mom's bathroom where her period products were and would take them. And I think she, knew to just like keep it stocked. We never had a conversation about like, hey, I need more pads or I need more tampons. So for me, my period came with so many ups and downs, but I genuinely thought that I was so blessed that I didn't have to have my period every month because it was so gross. And at the time, I really did think that like periods were from the curse of Eve of eating the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. And so I thought like, oh, this is great that I don't have mine every single month. Little did I know that now, a lot of health professionals would consider your period your sixth vital sign of health. And so if it is irregular, or if it's really painful, or if you have a lot of clots or unending bleeding, that is a sign of health issues. Anyways, back to my mission of having this never ending period. So, on my mission, I had to go to a gynecologist, and I was so embarrassed already because, like, in my head, I considered the gynecologist like the baby doctor. This is where you go when you want to have kids, and if you're having sex, and if you need to get birth control, everything like that had to do with my actual body anatomy and the health of our body was turned so sexual. And so going to the gynecologist on my mission, I felt incredibly embarrassed, and there was little to no information about what was actually going on. So I do have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is also PCOS, and it's where your ovaries, instead of the cyst coming off your ovaries to make the egg, it just stays on your ovaries, and it can get a bunch of little cysts or really big cysts all over your ovaries. It's a little bit different than endometriosis, but it's similar in that it's a hormonal issue and a lot of women suffer from it. I'm sure that they kind of knew that this existed, but typically most women were told that they were pre-menopause is what they were told, and that like, you're just infertile. And so I find that out on my mission, is that that's like what the diagnosis is like, oh, you're premenopause, like you're going through menopause at 19 years old, and you're infertile. And that was horrific news for a 19-year-old missionary whose only goal is to serve a mission and telling everybody about families, how important families are. And then to have never ending bleeding. Like it got to a point where I was bleeding so bad that I had, a huge iron deficiency, lots of issues going on, but I had to be put on birth control to stop the bleeding. And I remember being just like so horrified and feeling so dirty that I had to get on birth control because I was a good Mormon girl who had never had vaginal intercourse. And notice how I said vaginal intercourse. Because I had definitely been doing other things that were not so great. But I considered myself a good Mormon girl because I consider myself still a virgin because I had not had vaginal intercourse. So to get on birth control felt like such a huge failure, and I felt like my first exam, like they had asked if I wanted a male doctor or a female doctor, and I was like, oh, I have no preference. Now I definitely have a preference. Like, what the fuck are men doing in gynecology? Weird as fuck to me. But at the time, you know, I'm in my little patriarchal religion. I'm like, men are just as great as women, or probably even thought that they were better. And this man, there was so much shame around it. He was like, oh, you're miscarrying. And that had to do just with being in Atlanta and dealing with with the racism. You know, he sees a young Black woman and assumes that she's not a virgin. And I said, I am a virgin. And every time I kept telling them a virgin, they're like, no, like you're probably having a miscarriage. I'm like, I've never had sex before. I've never had vaginal intercourse before, is what I would say. And then they kept trying to be like, well, let's do a vaginal exam. But so if you haven't had sex yet, then when they do an ultrasound to look at your ovaries, they will do it over the top on your belly to look at it. If you have had sex, then they will do it vaginally. And I remember going in for this ultrasound and talking to the nurse, and she's like, we're going to do it vaginally, and don't worry, because like this is way smaller than a adult man's penis. And me being like, well, I've never had an adult man's penis in my vagina, so you're gonna have to do it over the top. And she was like so annoyed because she's like, well, you're gonna have to drink all this water so that we can get a good look at your ovaries, yada yada yada. And I was like, yeah, then I'll drink the fucking water. Like, you're not shoving that wand up my vagina. And I hate how they say that it's like, well, it's not even as big, which technically, yeah, now that I've been with a man, that sounds so funny, it isn't as big, but it's still pretty fucking big, Debbie. Like, don't go shoving that just anywhere. And if I told you I'm a virgin, even if I wasn't a virgin and I wasn't comfortable with you shoving that up my vagina, I don't know why you had to act like it was such a big fucking deal to have me drink water and wait a little bit to get over the belly. Anyways, I didn't have a great time. It was awful. It was so awkward. I hated getting put on birth control. There was no like reassurance that like, hey, you're not dirty for having to take birth control. You're not dirty for like bleeding. Like, there was this assumption automatically that I must be miscarrying, some sort of whore, which now I'm kind of fine with it. I hope people think I'm a whore. Anyways, let's get into your submissions and how your premarital exams or first interactions with going to a gynecologist went. I was at BYU when I got engaged at the age of 19. I was told that to get my endowments, I had to get a premarital exam at the medical center on campus. I pretty much assumed I didn't have a choice if I wanted to get endowed. After calling to set it up, I got an email with instructions. Before my appointment, I had to complete a small online course on basic sex education. The course was really hilarious, but I guess some sheltered, true believing Mormons needed it. The appointment was horrible. I have PTSD, so I made a female friend come with me. The doctor ended up being a female service missionary. Ever had someone with a missionary name tag see how many fingers they could fit inside of you? I have. They were seeing how tight I was and ended up sending me home with dilators to use so my first time didn't hurt. The whole appointment was damaging and weird. I cried through the whole thing and was so scared that sex would hurt with my husband. I'm not sure how I ended up convinced I had to do it, but I was. It probably wouldn't have been so traumatic to someone who didn't already have an abuse history. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting to a dumb situation, but missionary name tags now give me intense anxiety. Oh, and everyone assumes I was a virgin, but I wasn't. I hadn't had sex in a long time, and the only sex I had prior was non-consensual. Also, this was in 2013 at the BYU Eye Wellness Center. I would also like to add that I was a convert to the church at the age of 16. I wasn't sheltered, but I was very by the book Mormon. Oh. See, and that like breaks my heart. There was a lot of people saying around this time, you know, like 2013, that it was a requirement told by bishops to young women that they had to have these premarital exams before they would sign off for them to be able to go to the temple and get married, which is wild. It doesn't seem like that's a thing anymore, but it definitely seems like women are just more naturally in Mormonism, you know, going and learning about sex. And we did talk about books that have come out for women within Mormonism to learn about sex. There was books back then as well for sex. So I don't know. I feel so incredibly sad for this person. And Good for you for having a female friend come with you. And the missionary name tag thing is fucking wild. Not saying that you can't be a missionary and healthcare provider, but like give the women real help, not just so that their husband can enjoy their wedding night. They did this back in 2007. I was so naive that I never even used a tampon before. First pelvic exam I ever had. It was very painful. I was given 2 syringes, no needles in them to act as a dilator. My wedding night was absolute agony. I cried all the way through, and my then husband did not care or stop. I cried myself to sleep that night and for many nights to follow. That's also a hard one for me. The marital rape that basically happens on women's wedding nights is very, very sad. And I can't believe that somebody would even feel comfortable continuing to go and have sex with you as you're crying, just thinking it's their right, especially someone who's supposed to love you and care about you. I'm really sorry. I saw a doctor reacting to some Utah gyno's website offering the dilators as a service relatively recently, like maybe in the last 3 years. The gyno insisted this was a much appreciated aspect of women's health in Utah. I can see how knowing that your patient is going to be in excruciating pain as her partner thoughtlessly pokes her until he ejaculates, as well as that you can't recommend masturbation and self-penetration, but you are certain your patient will absolutely not risk her immortal soul because the old creeps in charge tell her so, might make this seem like a compassionate alternative. The real answer is to stop shaming women and men about masturbation and teach men about female anatomy and sexual response. Your partner isn't a legal fleshlight, but then the church would have to believe that women were fully human children of God and not livestock. So true. Like there's an easy solution to this, and it's self-exploration instead of your first time being with someone who feels like they have a more right to touch your body and use your body for their pleasure than you do for yourself. And it's really sad. Just a quick plug, join the Pouty Girls Discord channel because I will post the rest if I don't have time to read through all of them. That kind of instruction isn't necessary if sexual activity is allowed. When people explore slowly, intercourse comes naturally after other sexual activity, and there's rarely any pain. It angers me that Utah doctors give women dilators to be ready for their wedding night. If your first sexual encounter is on your wedding night, don't have penetrative sex. It's not a woman's job to be a vessel for a penis. I don't understand why the expectation on your wedding night is to have vaginal penetrational sex. Like, why can you guys not do oral or figure out how to get each other to orgasm a different way before doing vaginal sex? And I think I already know the answer because it definitely was taught to my parents' generation. And I think the generation like a little bit older than me that like oral sex wasn't okay. Even like you touching yourself during sex was not okay. And so I think that is why it's become like vaginal penetration only when it's fact that so few women are actually going to have an orgasm from vaginal penetration. So you should spend time exploring one another on your wedding night and making it a good experience rather than thinking like you just have to put your penis in the vagina. So have just fun on your wedding night. There's no need. You can still like get off. Like you don't need to go 0 to 100 all of a sudden on your wedding night. Like you can spend your whole honeymoon working up to all of that. So like chill, slow down. Like you have spent this whole time like making out and like just hoping that you can touch each other. Just do that on the wedding night. You don't need to go all the way. A couple months ago, I talked to someone from the medical board who was in charge of the investigation of a doctor who insulted me. At some point during the discussion, reasons I'm not willing to discuss, it came up that there are a fair number of reports that come into the medical board in Utah by women who were taken by someone in their family for a premarital exam and not giving any information before the visit, limited information during the visit, and feel violated afterwards because they were never explicitly asked for consent. So yeah, the visits are still happening and without informed consent. Ethical medical practices will focus on sexual education, sexual health, birth control, HPV vaccination, the importance of consent even within a marriage, and will not do an exam without informed consent expressly stated. Sadly, it seems that the visits are often not ethical. If they were, the medical board would not be getting enough reports about them for it to be worth mentioning in a conversation. That is really sad. And there's actually even a lawsuit currently going on in Utah for OBGYN who assaulted pregnant women and women for premarital exams. Dr. Broadbent, I think is his name. I'll link the article to it. And that makes me so, so upset. And the fact is, I do feel like the Mormon church is responsible for that, for keeping men and women so naive about their autonomy, anatomy, and consent, and just understanding of sex education, making us afraid of it and ashamed of it, that this is what is happening for people's first appointment. Going to a trusted medical doctor, they are being sexually assaulted, which is really, really sad. Similar to me not discuss exactly what's going to happen, discuss exactly what you should expect so that you know what you're comfortable with and what you're not. Because even when you're going to the temple, there can be things that someone may not be comfortable with doing in the whole ceremony. Like, it's a long fucking ceremony. So there are things that they may not be comfortable with, and parts that they may not want to consent to, and other parts that they may. And some people may be okay with the whole thing. But even when you're going to the doctor now, bringing it back to, getting your premarital exam, there may be parts of the exam that you're okay with to consent to, and there may be parts that you might want to skip. There is plenty of women who I know who don't like to have a vaginal exam and would rather skip it. And that is your medical right. It is your choice. The doctor doesn't get to tell you what they're going to do. You get to tell them what you're comfortable with and what you're going to consent for them to do. And that is why you need to have the knowledge of exactly what's going to happen. I was married in 2018. I had a premarital exam and asked about the expanders because I was freaked the fuck out about how bad it was going to hurt. I didn't get them because they were super expensive for what they are. My husband and I are both out of the church now, and we wish we just did the deed all the time when we wanted to while we were dating and engaged. That's, I feel like, how so many people feel, especially like now upcharging for these dilators. And I actually, like, yeah, I get why they're expensive. Dildos and vibrators are expensive, but like, I wish that like they would stop again acting like this is like medical. So yeah, you can go ahead and shove these dick-shaped things up your vagina, but no, you can't shove one that vibrates and actually gives you pleasure up there. So wild. 2011 for me, 20-year-old virgin. I wanted birth control a month or so before my wedding and was told that I'd have to have an exam beforehand. I had a female doctor at the time. She did a basic pelvic exam, only wanted to see how many lubed up fingers she could insert comfortably just into the opening. She definitely recommended dilators. My mother was shocked and shamed me into not using them. Spoiler, I really, really, really should have used them. But my doctor actually took the time to really explain female anatomy and wanted to talk about pleasure. It was awkward, but still like nice, I guess. And I just know that there were lots and lots of girls that 100% needed that talk. Of course, I didn't admit that my fiance and I had already done almost everything, but the big P in the V. See, and that's like, I feel like how it should be. Like, yeah, even if it is awkward, because it is awkward for a lot of us, because we've never talked about sex. Like, even the people who you're so close with, like me, for example, with my parents, the people who should have taught me about this, didn't feel comfortable telling me anything about sex. So, of course, it's gonna be fucking awkward when a rando doctor that you're just meeting is telling you all about sex. This, like, makes me flash forward to when I dealt with infertility, or I am infertile, basically, guys. I am. And infertile in the sense that, like, not that I can never get pregnant, but like, I have unprotected sex all the time. I don't know why that makes me laugh. I have so much unprotected sex. But oh my gosh, that makes me laugh so hard. I have unprotected sex. And last time I had a baby 5 years ago, and I haven't even had an inkling of a scare. Even though, like, yeah, I track my period, but it's all over the place. But I did find out, because to have my second child, I had to do infertility treatments. And I found out that I do not ovulate. So even though I may get my periods to being regular, I won't ovulate. So the egg cannot be fertilized. I learned everything I know about sex and sex education was from my fertility doctor, getting into such great detail of how everything works. And really it's so simple. Like that's one thing that I was just like, why couldn't my parents not even like talk about this? Like this is so simple. I was 24 years old learning about all of this stuff and about how my body actually worked and like what the issue was and what was going on, which I feel like it set me up for so much better in life and knowing how to take care of myself just in general because of knowing how my fertility and period even works. This one, I love these ones. I'm gay, but there's something hilarious thinking about a doctor finding out you're gay, then is like, here, you're gonna need this, and hands over a giant anal dilator. That killed me. And I want to like legitimately, if my gay friend just got married, and I wish I would have gotten him anal dilators, even though he's not a virgin. I just think that would have been the funniest, most like Mormon Utah gift to give him. Oh my gosh, that kills me. I'm gonna read a couple more of these and then we'll get on to the wedding night. My premarital exam was terrifying. It was really painful when the doctor tried to insert a finger in my vagina, even more painful when he tried to insert a finger in my vagina and in my anus. He told me I needed to dilate because I was too tight, but his dilators were on loan. He gave me glass test tubes instead. The honeymoon was terrible. The most embarrassing part, I only found out 2 years ago from my best friend that this wasn't normal. I'm a doctor now, not an OBGYN though, trained in Utah, and it was mortifying. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't imagine realizing later on that you had been sexually assaulted and thinking that that was normal until like going through your training as a doctor and finding that out. I'm really, really sorry that this happened to you. And I hope that you are healing from that experience. And you really didn't deserve that. None of us deserved any of this. My doctor told me to manually stretch myself in the tub with my fingers. Sounds like I lucked out. This was in Provo. Yeah, I mean, you got to be told that you could actually touch yourself, and since it's medical, you can do it. Yeah, I would be like, that's how it should be. It should be gradual like that, and it should be for your pleasure, your body warming up and knowing these things for your pleasure. I think the biggest thing that makes me have the ick about the dilators, and not in like, oh, dilators are gross. Like, no, I think what makes me have the ick is it's all about the man. And none of it is about the female pleasure. Like, yeah, they're like, use lube, but like, none of it is talking about how like you're going to need foreplay, like, and giving permission to like not have penetrative sex on your wedding night. Like, why, again, going back to that, why the fuck do you need to have penetrative sex on your wedding night if you're a virgin and have never had sex? Why can you not just like lead up to it and have fun? Why does it have to be this big moment of like, now he can stick his penis in there? And for the guy, like, why would you want to? Like, are you really that desperate to get off that you're just like, yeah, like, I know it hurts her, but like, I need this? Like, you're telling me that like you can't just have fun, like going down on each other? I don't know. Like, now it just seems so absolutely fucking absurd to me that I'm crashing out. I'm legitimately crashing out over this. In 2012, I had a female doctor who was happy to explain them and give me a prescription for birth control without any unnecessary physical exam. I ultimately think that they were helpful, but I think foreplay also would have been more helpful. In hindsight, obviously, this is a strange practice, but I've wondered how much is rooted in understanding that most men in Mormon culture, one, won't be educated about the female body and female pleasure at all, and two, won't consider the pleasure of their partner that high on their priority list. Like trying to help all the girls who are about to be blindsided about how much bigger a penis is than, say, a tampon. This is a really good point, and it kind of goes back to what that last commenter said about like, yeah, like there's no way that any of these women are going to actually, masturbate or use a vibrator or dildo. And so maybe this is a good alternative of having this premarital exam and being able to get the dilators so that you're not just miserable. I also think that it leads to men and a culture that thinks that this is okay. because it's not okay. It's not. Like, there are so many better solutions than you having to just suck it up and having to not enjoy your wedding night for him to get off. I do. I just think that there are so many better solutions. And I think that, like, regardless of the religious instance of this, I think that the best advice could be of, instead of handing out dilators, which again, if you have an actual medical condition, which you very well could be, especially if you're raised Mormon and have good girl syndrome, you very well could have vaginismus. Absolutely give them the dilators. You need that. And then there's the other women where it's like, even women with vaginismus, even them would have been better helped and probably been better helped to get over this and relax their pelvic floor if this was not such a high expectation to have penetrative sex. And I think that, again, this thing that penetrative sex automatically means that you're not a virgin, which is just not true. I remember telling a friend's mom in high school that, like, well, I'm a virgin, like, I've only done oral, so I'm a virgin. And her being like, you know, virginity is a social construct, and technically anytime you're losing your innocence around sex in general would be kind of like losing your virginity. I remember like freaking out, being like, do I have to talk to my bishop now? But again, like, talking about, like, there's other ways to have pleasure. You don't need to go all the way on your wedding night. You can make this a build up and have a great time and have fun with your partner instead of feeling like you just have to have this horrible first time experience. It does not need to be horrible. It doesn't. It just doesn't need to be a horrible experience. And I feel like that's going to be good to lead into kind of these wedding night horror stories. And again, like I said, I will never make you guys tell me your, you know, deep, dark secrets or stories without me telling you mine. And unfortunately, I don't have a horror story to tell because I did not experience this. My husband and I slept with each other before we were married. Me and him, like, that was both of our first times, but it was long before, a year before we were married, that this all started. And it happened very quickly. We had a very great spark immediately. I do think that you can feel like you have a spark with someone because you are so repressed without actually having a spark with them. Like, I remember telling my husband that, like, a lot of the guys I was dating, I actually did not realize how unattracted sexually I was to them before meeting you. And not in a bad way. I just didn't know, like, what was a romantic feelings for someone, platonic feelings for someone, sexual feelings for someone. I didn't really know the difference. And I probably would have married someone who I actually was not sexually compatible with or attracted to had I not met my husband and us started sleeping together, which was, my gosh, like, the shame just around that, because we were both, you know, recently returned missionaries. This was like a couple months after returning home from our missions that we started sleeping together. And how weird to be like, have to take off your garments to sleep together. At least some people, like, I guess none of us were really like that, unless it was your wedding night and you got to wear like lingerie. But I'm assuming that you had to go change into that out of your garments because you're supposed to wear them. I don't know how that really works, because I got married and wasn't wearing garments at the time, but I still did everything modestly. But at this time, like, me and my husband were like going through church discipline. But I will say that I am so happy that I did not wait for my wedding night to have sex with my husband, because again, I wouldn't have known how sexually compatible we were and how actually important that was for me. And two, it was all a lead up. Like, we, you know, gradually kept fooling around until, you know, the first time that we tried to have vaginal sex, it didn't work out. And it was totally fine. Like, both of us we just stopped and we're like, we'll try it again another time. We'll do other stuff for now. And I'm really, really grateful for that, because we just got to explore each other and get to know what each other liked, what we didn't like, and got to be more comfortable with each other. The only thing that I will say that still was a hard hang up for me was I was not comfortable with myself. And I think that that is probably the biggest thing that has always been my issue, is like I wasn't comfortable. Like I always relied on him for my pleasure because we were not allowed to masturbate and stuff. And I don't think that that is healthy. I don't think it's healthy to rely solely on another person to give you sexual gratification or pleasure because it's not their responsibility, right? It's just as important for you to care about getting yourself off as it is for you to care about getting your partner off. Like it should be a mutual thing. You should want your own pleasure and you should want to give your partner pleasure. That's just how I view it now. And so before being so shamed about masturbation and about like touching yourself and pleasure just in general, like I know there's going to be people listening to this and every time I say the word pleasure are going to be cringing because just that word in general has been beaten down in us of like, that's disgusting. Pleasure's disgusting, that we're just not used to it. We're not used to it at all. And it's so especially not for ourselves. Let's get into some of these wedding night stories. Now that I've shared mine, I will say my wedding night was great. My husband and I didn't even actually sleep together because he was sick and there was no issue. We had a great honeymoon. He was better a couple days on and it was really, really great. Let's get into your stories. I had a similar experience when they gave me the dilators without the downstairs check, as I'd had one that year already. I was worried that it would hurt on my wedding night. I knew nothing about the concept of foreplay or relaxing my vagina. The night of the wedding, we went to a hotel and the next morning it looked like someone had legit been murdered in that bed. I bled so much. A good portion of the night was spent in the bathroom, too embarrassed to come out. I knew it was only halfway done, though, so I asked my now ex to just get it over with. It was fucking horrendous. He was upset because he knew he was hurting me. I was upset because I didn't stop bleeding for a week. It took a full month before it completely stopped. Ow. And that is just not okay. It's not okay. And maybe you're still a virgin listening to this. Like, that's not okay. Not okay. You should not be hurting your first time having sex. You should not be like bleeding that much. Yes, there can be blood, but like that's just not okay. This person says it was traumatizing. Seriously, so bad. Here's the backstory. My wife and I dated for 2.5 years. Both of us were Mormon, both horny as hell, so we got to third base more times than I can count during those 2.5 years of dating. Not to get graphic, but we got as close to sex as you could get without actually losing the V card. If he never once acted like she regretted or felt any guilt about any of the fooling around. Anyway, we finally get to do the deed on our wedding night, and she immediately starts sobbing, uncontrollably sobbing, because as she claimed later, she was suddenly seeing all her young women's leaders being disappointed that she was having sex. Seriously, no guilt over fooling around for 2.5 years, but when we're married, she feels guilty. Fuck the church. Neither of us had an orgasm on our wedding night. It was brief because of guilt, not due to inexperience. Man, there is a lot of stories like this that all of a sudden, like the night of it, you know, you've gotten up to that line in Mormonism, you know, of like everything except vaginal penetration, and then you can't, and you feel so guilty. I feel really bad for this couple. Don't even ask me about the first time I had sex. My God, I thought I was going to freaking hurt. I think I told you how weird the temple was for me, and then after all that weirdness, my first time through, my ex and I were both virgins. I found out later he wasn't, though. I did not know this at the time. I got so nervous that I actually caused myself to start my period 2 weeks early, and it bled through my dress. Oh my gosh, your wedding dress. No. Then after this, when we had to go to the hotel room, I locked myself in the bathroom and started bawling. I told him through the door that I couldn't because I was on my period and I was so sorry. He told me not to worry about it and that I could just suck his dick and he would be fine with that. What? I was an 18-year-old girl. I didn't know what to do. I got out my iPhone and Googled in the bathroom how to suck dick and got inundated with hundreds of porn sites and then really started crying. I tried to pull myself together and fix my makeup and hair and put on something sexy and came out and proceeded to fumble around miserably at this and went to bed thinking, oh my God, I am freaking incompetent and what man would ever want to be with me or around me. Then when I got home after our honeymoon, I had 500 people asking me about how it was and what the sex was like. And wow, I don't even want to think about how that made me feel. I was like, oh yeah, it was great. just lied. Although I basically felt like the biggest idiot in the world. To be honest, I actually think the whole wait for sex until marriage thing is a huge setup for absolute horrible anxiety attacks. I have no idea why any culture would encourage this. Oh my gosh. Yeah, a lot of people, it's a nightmare. And I can't imagine like starting your marriage off on such a horrific experience. It's literally experience where it's like, I don't want to ever see this person again. And which would be totally fine if it was like one night stand, because then you're like, okay, it was a horrible experience. We never have to see each other. But now you're married, and not just married, but for time and all eternity in Mormonism. Like, it's forever, ever. He had trouble getting it in and lasted for a few weeks. I finally Googled the problem, and it turned out I had vaginisma, an involuntary contraction of the muscle. It was about 8 months before we finally had sex. Yeah, this is a huge thing that happens again within Mormonism and religious communities in general. We went to the hotel. I put something fun on. I was excited. My husband just kind of shrugged. We kissed, touched, and he came prematurely. I was so horny I couldn't sleep. He was unrousable the entire night. We finally had sex in the morning, and it was a good release for me, but he didn't seem to enjoy it. While we did get better at it, that basically sums up our marriage. He turned out that he was also into men. I vowed I would not risk going through that ever again. Yeah, another big one within Mormonism. You find out that your spouse is gay. This can go for, men or women. Very, very sad that that is what happened to you. The worst part about my wedding night / honeymoon and first year was that I was afraid if I didn't either have sex or hand job him anytime he even gave a hint he wanted it, that he would masturbate, look at porn, or have an affair. It's sick. I was his sex mate and had to perform or feel guilty. Sex was fine, a bit uncomfortable, but I'm glad I was a virgin. It made it special to share, so I don't regret that at all. Of course, we weren't perfect before our wedding night, for which I just always felt so guilty. Yeah, like it's crazy how so many of us, even though our husbands may be good guys and don't expect us to just like put out whenever, that is in so many of our brains. Like that was in my brain. My husband would never act like that ever, that like anytime he wants it, he should get it ever. And that's just what I thought, that like, that's what you're here for. So there definitely must have been a lot of messaging growing up in church and young women's and stuff that like made us all feel that way, because there's so many like this. I started dating my Mormon boyfriend at 15. I was baptized when I was 17. We fooled around a lot in our teenage years, but we never had sex. His dad and stepmom were so strict, and we ended up having to confess some of our sins. Fast forward, he served a mission. I waited. He gets home from his mission. We fool around, get sealed in a temple. Regardless, we didn't have sex. Wedding night comes, and bam, I'm scared shitless and actually didn't enjoy sex for a long time until we introduced a little friend. My vibe. That's another story for another day. I'm mad that we waited to have sex. We were so in love and didn't get to experience that passion that comes with young puppy love. Maybe I would have learned to love sex. Instead, his stepmom gives me a talk on our way to the temple on our wedding day, telling me that it's not going to feel good for a while, but I'll eventually get used to it. I feel like it messed me with my head. Even to this day, I feel like it fucked me up. I remember after I joined the church how I was trying so hard to dress modestly and do everything by the book. I wasn't comfortable wearing stupid ass long shorts, but I did it because I wanted to be modest. After my husband's mission, I was the one who was pushing so hard to be spiritual, and he could care less. This has been 12 years of me tirelessly pushing myself to be something I'm not. Then he finally decided he was taking a break from the church and started on his quest to research the church. That's how I got here. I unfortunately spent a lot of time holding a grudge that my now husband even introduced me to the church to begin with. I know he was only 15. He was doing what he was taught. I know it has led to us where we are today, but I feel like I missed out on so much because I joined the church. I can't help but hold that grudge. Yeah. That's a big one. Like, I would also be upset that, like, hey, my life's going relatively well, and now I have all these weird, fucked up ideas about sex because I converted to this religion to marry my now husband. Totally understandable. I feel like there needs to be a support group for women who are freshly out of the church or in the church or whatever group to help them take away the shame and help us embrace our sexuality more. It's taken me years to overcome most of my issues with sexuality. Of course, I recently came out as bi, but at least I'm living my truth now and I'm able to embrace being me. When I was in high school, I was having sex with my boyfriend, and every time we were done, he made me get down on my knees and repent. but then he would be the one coming on to me and then basically blame it on me when he was finished. That fucked me up for years and years. I didn't know better. I was too afraid to come out and say anything, but things started to fall apart when I became more vocal and suddenly he found God again. It took me a long time to feel like I could be okay again. It honestly took me not giving any more fucks and finding my truth to stand up for myself. I'm so sorry for to myself that I had to deal with all the pressure of not feeling worthy. Yeah, so true. Like, you should not have had to deal with that. And I feel like that happens to so many teenage Mormon girls who accidentally go all the way, but then don't feel like they can talk to anybody about their actual abusive boyfriend because they're being manipulated. And it's just another way that they can freaking manipulate them. I just love this one. I was a hot blooded, mostly true believing Mormon girl. I couldn't wait to do the deed at night. No problems at all. I was so excited and fun. Interesting how different we all are. Yes, I feel like that's kind of how my story was too, except like I also didn't feel pressure to like keep going, and maybe that's what it was like you were just ready for it, where it was so different. You were, lubed up, ready to go. Ready for cringe? You're going to cringe. Pre-mission, we both were typical teenagers. We did everything sort of sex, and we stopped there because I thought she only wanted it because I seemed to, and she knew I wanted to do the mission thing. Got home, she had waited and wanted to get married as quickly as possible. I wanted to date around a bit, but because of hormones and social pressures, that didn't happen. And we got married about 18 months later. She was excited. She finally got to touch it being the penis. And I got a handy on the way from the temple to the reception. That night, though, we hit a roadblock. Every time we were ready and move towards penetration, I'd deflate. More play, try again, same thing. After 2 days of this, I called my parents. My dad wasn't home, but my mom was ecstatic because it meant we hadn't gone too far before and said to give it time. By the end of the week, since I've had no issues, basically what I understand is because I had made that line, my body was like, nope, can't cross it. I always hear of good girl syndrome, but this is the first time I've heard of good boy syndrome. Oh my god. First of all, I just love the way that you told that in general was so funny. But yes, that would be so embarrassing. But the fact that you called your parents, but what else do you do? Like, it's so embarrassing, but like, we're more embarrassed to Google and like potentially find porn than we are to just like call our parents, which you should be able to talk to your parents. But also, that would be so embarrassing to be like, yeah, mom, like, it won't stay up. Oh, but good for you. Good for you. I'm happy. I'm happy you're doing the deed and everything's going great. My wedding night went about as well as you could expect from two virgins, one of whom was a very closeted gay man. At the time, church leaders told me that gay folks were supposed to keep their mouths shut and pretend that we were straight. So that is exactly what I did. I don't remember more than 5 minutes of my wedding reception because I was terrified that after our wedding night, the marriage would be over and done with. As it turned out, I got it through it without embarrassing myself too badly and left the church and my wife 5 years later. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel so bad. I feel so bad for all of the gay people out there. Like, I don't even know how you guys do this. I don't know how there's still gay people within Mormonism. Like, I know there's some that are like openly out and still going to church, which like good for you, but I could not fathom being celibate my whole life and a virgin my whole life. I could not. And I also could not fathom having to do it with somebody who you were not sexually attracted to, let alone like only being expected to be with one gender that you're not sexually attracted to. Yeah, just could not even imagine. That's all for your submissions. And thank you so much for submitting. We have to get into just, a wrap up of purity culture and how it has really damaged us. Just the framework that your sexual purity has everything to do with your morality and worth and everything for you to be a virgin is so harmful. To me, it makes me think that like the female body is not just a body, it's a symbol and an object, and virginity is treated like your moral currency. So even if you're married and you've had sex, you still can feel like a slut, which girls, you should want to feel like a slut. It feels fun. It's more fun to be a slut, I think. You're this some sort of whore that should just be thrown away when it's just not true. No matter how much sex you're having or not having, like, you are a worthy individual. You should be allowed to masturbate. Your body and is absolutely not a temple. Turn it into freaking red light district. Get it in because it's so much better than being a temple. Anyway, to wrap it all up, for all of us who like thought we were broken because of how our bodies responded or how they didn't respond, we are really not broken. You know, we were just given the worst user manual in the world. I feel like there's still so much that we are still recovering, and some of us are still in marriages, some of us are in mixed race marriages, some of us are divorced. And I hope that you're in therapy. I hope that you have expanded your sex ed and are asking really good questions and reclaiming your body because it's yours. So if you never want to get married or if you just want to masturbate all the time, like fucking do it. It is your body. You deserve pleasure. It is okay to have pleasure. You do not know if there is going to be a life after this life. And so having a little bit of pleasure is not going to kill you. So until next time, babes, I hope that you stay mouthy, stay pouty, and don't let anyone tell you what to do with your sexuality, your vagina, your asshole. I hope that you are having so much sex, so much wild, great sex. Next week, we're going to dive into more of adoption. And so make sure to follow me at Pouting Mouth Podcast on Instagram. You can get your submissions in, and make sure to join Pouty Girls Discord channel so that you can see the rest of the submissions and chat about it. I also have a little channel called The Confessional on Instagram that you can join for updates and just more talk so that we can discuss things even after the episode. I'm so happy you're here. Please write a review, subscribe to the podcast, send it to your friends, share this on your social medias. Bye.
Hello? Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey sinners, it's your fucking prophet speaking. God says that we actually came from her vagina, not Adam's rib. God wants us to address her as that bitch now in all prayers and legal documents. Did you know that John has a twink on the side? Olivia doesn't even know. Oh my god, I heard that they're swingers. She practically propositioned me in the church parking lot. Having gained an angel, more like hell gained a bitch.